It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday we are talking men and panic. Yeah. And everybody panics. This is not something obviously exclusive to men, but the social pressures on men involving not seeming weak can make panic not only something that's very, very difficult to understand and process, but also there are certain pressures on men that make panicking and the expression of panic a unique thing. And it's really important to talk about this and understand it, because this is one of these things that get into sort of the manosphere discourse about the deck being stacked against men, and we're gonna break that down into a bit more nuance, because manosphere stuff tends to be great at getting this close to identifying the actual problem, but the solutions to it are way off base. And unfortunately, that's because there's a lot of grifters in that space. And so they want you to keep coming back. They want you to become dependent. So you'll keep paying them more money instead of actually giving you the ability to go off and thrive and live your happy life. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you like this content, please help support it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for somebody who can use it but can't afford it. Ko-fi.com/Leanna K. Or if you're not interested in joining the Discord, getting extra videos, you just want to kick a few bucks, the GoFundMe is the way to go there. So the discussions on the Discord that you can become a member of by signing up to any of our support systems, so that we can prove you are a real person and validate who you are. Validate who you are. Validate that you are a real person that we can trace. That's how we do it. So it's not cliquey, so that people can come if they happen to find, one of these videos through the YouTube algorithm and goes, hey, this is cool. This is a community I want to be a part of. That's how you do it. And they go out at the beginning-ish of every month. But that the coffee support is super important, because, I do work with people who need the support and can't afford it. In some cases, because panic has taken their life away from them. And that's tough, because let's talk about what panic is first, and then we'll talk about how it uniquely affects men and the unique problems with how men express panic. Panic is not just, a typical feeling. It is a response. It is our fight or flight response in the body. And that's there for a reason. That's there to keep us safe. It is there so when something dangerous happens, we get this surge of adrenaline and additional blood flow and heart rate, and so we can run away or fight it, or in some cases freeze to, let the threat pass without creating further, irritations on it. And now everybody panics sometimes, okay? Panic disorder is something different. And somebody just said to me over the weekend how the word phobic is used way too much in society. And, phobias are real things. Intense fears of things are real things. It's not just, not liking gay and trans people. That's just not liking gay and trans people. And panic disorders can really, really restrict people's lives. I have been having to be a real heavy with some people who there are people out there who say all the right things. They seem to really understand, mental health stuff, But then when it comes down to it, they lose all compassion for people with diagnosed disorders, or worse, they weaponize their disorder to not just not just get reasonable accommodations, but actually, get more. And unfortunately, it's very hard to tell which is which sometimes. I know a lot of guys I talk to, they'll have a family member or a partner with a condition, and they'll say, they feel trapped by a loved one's psychological situation, and that you should never feel that way. That's not the point of therapy. That's not the point of support. You can validate someone's feelings without agreeing with the reasons for the feelings, or agreeing with their version of events. And there's a lot of abuse of therapeutic language out there. And so I don't want anybody to feel that what I'm going to say going forward is in any way saying that you should just have to eat shit ever. That's going to increase panic, right? Because the best we can tell is that panic disorders happen when people are under intense stress as a rule. And so then that one little thing pushes them into panic, right? So you're almost at breaking point so often that the slightest little thing that quote unquote shouldn't bother you does. And the purpose of boundaries is to create a buffer between what's normal and your breaking point, so that there is some pad when things get tougher or more intense. That's what they're designed to do. That's not the way a lot of people present boundaries, but that's what they're intended to do. And some people have a genetic, some people say predisposition, some people say vulnerability. There is a biological component to the panic response. And there's a lot of things at play there. One theory is that an injury or extreme illness in childhood sets your panic response a little higher. Sets it like a lower threshold, or you're feeling more stress. You're more likely to panic than other people on a biological level. This has nothing to do with your toughness. Okay, this is biology. This is your baseline. Like, this is your core stats, right? Other research shows that if your mother was under intense stress, well, you were in the womb, then cortisol levels are heightened in utero. That can create a biological underpinning that makes us more prone, which is why one theory about why, violent tendencies are seen much more in men from poor backgrounds, in poor environments, that, there was abuse in the home, mom was under stress, and so that baseline got set suboptimally, we'll say. And that is not your fault. I check every box on that one, so I have to work way harder. And a lot of y'all know I'm one of the tougher SOBs you'll ever meet. So the other two parts are generally how much stress or anxiety you were taught when you were a kid, especially a little kid. Were you taught to be afraid of the world, or were you taught that people will generally support and protect you, not all the time, but most of the time. You know, these baselines about how we view the world and what we expect from the world are really fundamental. I had to reset mine because I did have parents. Well, I think one of my parents was legitimately afraid of the world. I think the other parent used the fear of the world to control. Um, my parents were so bad they didn't want us playing with neighborhood kids. Now, in my father's case, it was because some of those kids were black and he was a racist. Um, but that sense that the world is not safe and something is going to jump out from you from every corner, that's that makes day-to-day life, just going outside, much more overwhelming and feel much more outside of our control. Then there are specific psychological points. We all have things that, no matter how tough we are in other areas, those particular things set us off. I've been dealing with someone for over a week now who has a tendency to repeat the things that, some of the phrases that were warning signs that my father was going to get violent. And that's not this other person's problem, but I had to, suck down that response because of it. And, that's, everybody has their sensitivities. We can do what I did, which is learn to moderate it. But that original lurch, in our guts and our chests never entirely goes away. And we have to feel that and then work through, like, this is an echo. This is not the primary sound, right? Now, on the one hand, some of these things are legitimate warning bells. Not that somebody's going to get imminently violent, but some of the reasons that my father was as out of control as he was is I think that he panicked a lot of the time. His behavior was profoundly irrational, and that caused him to do a lot of terrible things. And it was because he couldn't admit what he perceived to be weakness in himself. And it was humiliating for him if his children showed what he perceived to be weakness. And so if we cried, he gave us something to cry about. That was echoed a lot when I was a kid. And so obviously when you grow up in an environment like this, and a lot of boys do, we live in a culture that is savage to boys. My dad wanted a boy. He was stuck with two girls. I was the less girly one, so I got honorary boy treatment. And it's savage. The things that we do to toughen boys up is not fair. There's no science in it. It doesn't work. It doesn't make you strong. What it makes you is, and this is the problem when we talk about masculinity being fragile. It's not, the construct's not fragile because it's so intense, right? We all know that we can't get outside that man box. We do that and we're punished. And see, I was trapped because in the greater world, if I violated, the woman box, I got punished. But at home, you can't violate the woman box and you can't violate the man box. And that's really, really confusing because, my mother would get embarrassed if I was insufficiently girly, and my father would freak out if I was insufficiently tough, and so I couldn't win. And so I get it, you know. And so what happens when we're, overclocked, when we're cranked all the time, any amount of extra stress pushes us into panic. Our system's going, I can't do this anymore, right? Um, the Then there are the intense triggers. Even if you feel calm, something that you associate with very bad thing that happened and was very bad in the past, no matter how calm you may be at baseline, that just sends you into panic. And learning what those are and really understanding why that happens, I felt has been extremely important to me, extremely useful. Instead of going off on that guy, I recognized, like, okay, this is something that is associated for me with violence. So it may not be here. Just because it was back then doesn't mean it is now. P.S. This is over the internet. He can't hurt you. Right. Simmer down, Sparky. I didn't act immediately on the surge of adrenaline. And that's very important. Now, the challenge in doing that is a lot of people think the right thing goes, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's no big deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal, and you have to validate that it was a big deal for this to work. Because you don't want to self-gaslight. You don't want to invalidate your feelings. And men are trained to self-gaslight. And so when you first start doing these techniques, you feel like you're letting yourself off the hook. You feel like you're making excuses. You feel weak. But I'm a tough motherfucker. So, if you want to be a tough motherfucker, this is the way it works. Because in order to just stay chill while this is going on, you got to do this. You got to go, yep, that was bad in the past, but is it bad now? Because the unique challenge for men, if a woman panics, then she cries, and, the toxic feminine response is, I'm hurt, therefore I'm harmed, therefore I'm abused, therefore he abused me, right? And you're like, what the hell is going on? When a man panics, it tends to come out in ways that more directly align with what we consider criminal behavior. And this is the imbalance, right? The self-medication with alcohol or drugs, reckless behavior, withdrawal, like withdrawing from people, throwing yourself into work, going out for drives, going out for walks, the either explode or retreat thing. This is more likely to get you in trouble with the law than just blaming other people for your shit, right? And that in turn, when you withdraw or when you cause people to be frightened of you, then you don't get those things that make you feel better, right? You're more isolated. You get less support from the people around you. You may develop health issues, not just from drinking too much, but just the constant stress. And, you stop sleeping, and when you sleep, it's not great. And you lose friendships because people can't win with you. And people don't want to be the person who's there when you punch a wall or start screaming. This is incredibly alarming for people, and it's scary. And that the more you do it, the guiltier you feel. The guiltier you feel, the less likely you are to recognize and accept help and support when it's there. And that's the big trap of manosphere type stuff, is that it preys on your self-loathing and encourages you to deflect and project the internal onto the external. You know, the bad feeling is because of your parents. The bad feeling is because of your bitch ex, you know, or that bitch girlfriend or that bitch wife and all that stuff, you know. And you know what? All of those people may have wronged you, but they're your ex for a reason. And that inner turmoil, revenge won't make it stop. Blowing up won't make it stop. Getting angry won't make it stop, because at the core of it is really fear and a whole lot of bottling up. Because remember, panic is about that sense of a lack of safety, a lack of security, a lack of control. That's fear. And we get angry at the fear, and we get angry at ourselves for feeling that fear, because men aren't supposed to be afraid. Men are supposed to be tough and brave. Bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is being afraid and doing it anyway. And bravery can become stupidity when that fear is there for a good reason and you're doing something reckless. And the reckless behavior is because you're afraid all the time. You can't tell the smart decisions from the not smart decisions. And that's what I think Alan Wake 2 did so beautifully, was that metaphor of, you know, some of the shadows actually will hurt you. A lot of them won't. And, you know, you waste your flashlight battery on one, and you shoot bullets at one and you wasted it. And so then you're like, okay, I'm just going to ignore all the shadows because it's not real and I don't want to waste my ammo and flashlight. And then one comes, grabs you by the throat, slams you down, and you take massive damage. And that's why the people who say, Alan Wake shouldn't be so hard, there shouldn't be ammo hoarding mechanics. No. If you don't have the limited resources, that metaphor doesn't work. That sense of not knowing what to do and the frustration and the just, this isn't fair, you lose that. If you don't have that ammo hoarder and resource hoarder mechanic, it's integral to the experience. Okay, now I know my Wednesday's video is going to be, it's going to be an Alan Wake. Yeah. Okay. And see, that's one of the things I do to get out some of the nervous energy, is I act like an idiot and move around a lot, because movement actually is very, very good for diffusing panic, because that's what that fight or flight response is trying to get you to do, to move. And so if you just get up and, like, you know, autistic people have it right with the stimming, okay? Like, stimming blows off stress. And you got to do it in a way that isn't antisocial, but just getting up and walking around, you know, rolling the head, rolling the shoulders. You can even, like, any movement, run in place, something, any non-violent movement will help dissipate all that adrenaline and cortisol that's making you feel like, you know, you've just slammed, you know, what is it? The 30-ounce coffee at Starbucks? I forget what the heck it's called. But, like, imagine that was all espresso, like that feeling. And so that's something you can do. But panic is a unique cycle for men, because men don't have the panic response that women do that gets them. I mean, quite frankly, it's pity, but it is sympathy as well. And that's one of the things this is one of the things the manosphere gets really wrong. It's not that the world is biased against men in terms of the justice system on this point. It's that the the criminal standard is violence or fraud against other people. And because, women are encouraged to, whimper and cry, and men are encouraged to punch a wall when they're feeling the exact same things, that's what we see as proper behavior. One is potentially criminal because you're destroying property, and the other is not. And that doesn't mean that, when women and plenty of people, everybody makes false accusations if we're not careful. Women are not uniquely, again, if a woman says he abused me, society takes that a lot more seriously than if they say men abused me. If men say she abused me or even he abused me. And that's a problem too. I think we need to understand abuse better. But the statistics in these cases don't help on an individual basis, right? You have to judge each case on its merits and not, this is two people. We have to see them as two people. Because if we don't, well, it's the same reason that, people who eventually get charged and convicted of sexual assault, the last time I looked up the statistic, it could be wrong now, but somebody who ends up getting convicted of rape has an average of 7 victims. 7. Because they didn't get caught the first 6 times. The same way, someone who gets caught falsely accusing someone, it's not the first time they did it. They got more and more and more brazen, right? So this is the unique thing with men and panic is that, and I'm a wall puncher too. I mean, I've got the collapsed knuckles as a reminder of the stupid. I used to do that before because it was the only thing I could think of doing. I mean, I used to self-cut too. So, and that is not saying do it. There should have been a proper supports and proper intervention in my case much, much sooner. People were not empowered to do anything in my situation. YouTube has a thing about self-harm. I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying I've done it. Long time ago. And it is, it is what everybody says. It's just you have to get the overwhelming sense of do something out of you. Physical pain is more real than the emotional pain, and therefore it feels better. And I think that's why people do self-destructive behaviors that end up getting them punished, because it's scarier waiting for the negative consequence that you're terrified of instead of experiencing it. So if you're convinced that it's going to happen no matter what you do, best to get it over with, right? And you end up with a less good result in a less defensible position because you forced it. So what do? Like I said, it's that validation, If you validate that your emotion is real and it matters, you don't have to do the external things to make it real. And this is a very, very real thing with humans. The need for it to be real. And that's why, I'm very introverted. And so it took me a long time to understand why people talk about every little thing that happens to them on social media, because I just can't. But I think it's to make it real. It's to state it and to be able to look at it and go, that happened. And that makes complete sense to me because for a really long time, I, I denied I had, well, they didn't know what it was. They wouldn't give it a name, you know. And at the time I was diagnosed with PTSD, it was like that's the guy that goes and shoots a bunch of people, get far, far away from them. So it was a tough admission that that's what was going on with me. And they didn't have CPTSD. It wasn't as popularly used back then. But, complex trauma is a bunch of events, a lifetime of things. I mean, hearing my story, it's rough stuff, I have to do it in bits because if I talked about everything, people's jaw drop. And the last thing I want is pity. I can't stand pity. And I know a lot of guys I work with are the same way, that they'd rather be feared and hated than pitied. And that's the other thing. I think that's part of the reason I don't there's a lot of reasons I don't like Shadowheart. I'm compiling a list and I have to get through my second playthrough to check some things about her ending. But one of the, oh, poor Will. Oh, poor Astarion. Oh, poor Karlach. It's always poor. And I'm like, will you just stop pitying everyone in this damn camp? Stop. Stop pitying them. Stop it. Stop pitying. Because that's not what they want. People want to feel like their struggle is noble, not pitiable. People want to be the main character, right? They don't want to be that disposable victim of the week on Law and Order Special Victims Unit, who's just gone because they're just a plot device. They don't really matter. All the victims in SVU are designed to do is give Olivia Benson something to go and care very deeply about, right? It's like a different one every week. Those people don't matter. And that's when you're struggling for control, a sense of control. That's not how you want to feel. So validating the feeling that you're feeling this way for a reason and it matters is the first step. Take your overreacting out of your vocabulary. Not for you, not for other people. Just stop using it. Reacting strongly, objective observation. Overreacting is comparative. Compared to what? What are you overreacting compared to, right? You're not overreacting. You're reacting strongly. And then again, what I do, what I described, okay, I'm feeling this thing. Here's the things I do. Here's the things I will not allow myself to do. And this is tough because it involves admitting you made mistakes. And when you have a very invalidating childhood, that is the hardest thing in the world because this is intergenerational at this point. Dad flipped out because he couldn't admit mistakes. Mom was passive aggressive and emotionally manipulative because she couldn't admit she made a mistake. And there's often no intention to be abusive or manipulative. You feel like you're fighting for your life. And that's why it's very important to understand that certain behaviors are inherently manipulative. They're designed to take choices away from someone. When you're acting all big, because, when you're being all aggressive, that is designed to scare people into leaving you alone. When you withdraw, you're taking away the choice of someone to approach you, right? These are all things that, and that doesn't mean that sometimes it's not the right call, right? But when you're screaming at someone. That is being so scary that they'll stop. You may not be thinking about scaring someone because you don't think it's possible for you to be scary, but it is. You may be copying what you saw your parents do with something like, the thing of telling everybody a slightly different story because you're trying to people please the person right in front of you. That may have been a survival trait back in the day, but when you do it to your friends, that's manipulating them. You're leaving out certain details to deny them the ability to make a completely informed choice. And seeing these things for what they are is very important to the process of realizing this is not an acceptable response no matter what I feel. This is validating the feelings, not validating the behaviors. And then it's that slow process of boundary work. Finding out not just what the boundaries are, but how to set them and how to enforce them. And brief rule of thumb is that you want to be the immovable object, not the unstoppable force. You don't want to be explaining or screaming or throwing things or breaking things. You don't want to be doing that. That's the unstoppable force. The immovable object is just, no, I'm not going to. No. And if you keep doing this, I'm going to leave. 3 strikes rule, stuff like that. Once you start doing that, when you're feeling panicked, first of all, you'll start to catch it a lot sooner because you'll recognize it for what it is. Understanding and naming your feelings is so important. But once you start doing that, it feels much stronger. And the minute you realize that these things you thought were weakness, because it's just giving people permission to pick on you, are actually strength, it gets so much easier to do it again and again and again. And, if you do catch yourself panicking, if you do screw up, okay, it happens. Learn from it. Use it as fuel to do better. Move on. You can't turn back the clock. And find people you can talk to. Find people who are an outlet. There's a lot more people out there that want to support you. Just make sure you're not making it impossible to do so because you're trying to express your feelings, but what you're actually doing is attacking them. I feel followed by a feeling on the feelings wheel, right? Get yourself a feelings wheel and use the feelings wheel. I'll show you what a feeling wheel looks like. If you didn't, it's a different one than I used before, so you can see different ones. But this is a feelings wheel. Get the feelings wheel. Use the feelings wheel. I feel followed by a word on this wheel. And you'll notice weak, rejected, threatened, insecure, anxious. They're all part of the fearful piece of the wheel, not angry. Right? That's what you're feeling. You're feeling fear. And all these things combined, plus people you trust to tell you when you lost the plot, super, super important. And that involves trust. And that's a cycle. It's a little bit of trust and then a little bit more and a little bit more. A lot to take in. Panic is a big topic. Talk more about this on the Alan Wake video on Wednesday. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Or kick me some bucks on GoFundMe if you want to support our men's programming. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays.